I would like to introduce Charles Fernandez, who was with us last November if you were here on the ASMAC Day. Charles is an amazing composer, has written for many, many animated shows and some movies, uh, does live compositions, full compositions just for showpieces that are all amazing. Charles, if you would reintroduce yourself, I know we have a few new people. Jordan, Lundy, Diego weren't here. Lucas wasn't here the last time you were here. So if you could maybe tell us about a little bit about your how you got started, your musical journey, and how you got into music and what you do and all that.
Well, I started on clarinet in the third grade, and and I always was able to catch on to instruments pretty quickly. So if they needed an instrument, they would put me on it. I got to high school, I played saxophone in the jazz band. I played clarinet and I played bass clarinet. Got to college. Oh, by the way, I have to say, um, best ear training you could ever do in your life is taking down tunes from albums. When I was in high school, I was in a Chicago group, and but I didn't know there were sketch scorebooks. I did not takedowns of 9 Chicago tunes before I realized they had them. But by then, my ear had been trained incredibly, and it has served me very, very well. Also, if you want to be a composer, there's no substitute for learning how to play the instruments, just enough to know what not to write. Because I learned my in high school, I learned my first important lesson on trumpet because I did an arrangement of the theme from SWAT, which you guys probably never heard of. But I learned very early on you don't write high D's for high school trumpet players. They can't do it, or not more than once, and then they have to rest a while. So you learn these things while you're writing, and and if you want to write in the studios, you've got to be efficient, you've got to be fast, and you've got to write logically. You're not there to impress people with how difficult you can write, because that will just mean you're not hired again. So you got to be careful of that. Went to college at Loyola University in New Orleans. Then I came out here to UCLA. Then I went to the Royal College of Music in London. I lived in Bad Wiese, Germany. I was in an orchestra there for a while. Came back and started working my way into music. And I won't tell you my age, but my favorite instrument is, if it's animation, my favorite instrument is bass sax.
Okay.
It really is the perfect instrument for animation, or bassoon. But for melodies, oboe. For flexibility, the clarinet, because it's the by far it's the to me by far it's the most flexible. It can mix with the most different instruments and not protrude too much. So anyway, so that's me. I'm teaching. I teach now. I arrange for and write for. I just finished another flute orchestra work. Actually, I have a group called the Song of the Angels Flute Orchestra. Been conducting them for about 4 years, um, and we're actually having a piece of ours done in Washington today. So it's going to be interesting. So that's basically me.
I'm going to just play you a quick snippet of Is Forest Stories okay to play? Charles, with you, I want to show
Sure.
the flute orchestra. Is that okay?
Play whatever you want. Yeah. And folks, the let me tell you something about the big flutes, the really big flutes. They're wonderful. They're really expensive. The person in our group who owns them is actually an architect. If you want to buy these instruments, be an architect or a doctor, and you can buy these things. But the big problem is they're very soft. You could have one string bass totally blow away the sound of the lowest flutes. But you'll see when you hear it. But they're great. If you have 5 of them, you're set.
It was really amazing. I just wanted to share this great work that Charles does with the flute orchestra, and a lot of the reason those are bass flutes. Yes, am I being an idiot?
Well, the biggest one, looking along the back, the one on the right is a double contrabass. And it's a C instrument, but it plays as low as almost as low as the piano. Yeah, that's it. The one totally on the right. The one second from the right is the F double contra. That is the only one in the world. A guy named Katato makes these in Japan. There are about 16 of the big double flutes, double contra flutes, but that F contra, there's only one in the world and he's got it. The one next to it is the bass flute in F. The one right there, and the second from the left is a bass flute in F. It's the smallest one you have to stand up to play, and the one next to that is the more common contrabass flute. And there are a lot of those around. There are a few hundred around. But like the really big ones, they weren't invented till maybe the 70s of this in this century. And yeah, you have to have quite a few. You have to have quite a few shekels to get that. But what a lot of groups do is they will have a contrabass clarinet play with them, or they'll have string bass with them.
Charles, I think you had a really great lecture on storytelling within concert compositions, and what I was hoping to do is share one of your scores. You could tell me which one you want to share, but then also if you could tell us how you think about telling stories as you write.
So I'm gonna take you guys through the method that I went through. I was commissioned by Tarleton University in Stephenville, Texas, to write a band work for their 50th anniversary. This was a few years ago, and so okay, that's all I was told. Okay. So I had to come up with a story. I had to come up with a plan for it. So first, all right, so Texas. What do you think first when you think of Texas?
Cowboys.
Cowboys, exactly. All right, so now, what do cowboys do during the day when they're working?
Ride horses and crack the whip.
There you go, okay. And now from one of the students, maybe, what do cowboys do when they're playing? What would they do?
Come on, Huxley.
Go get some
Race
barbecue.
horses.
Well, that's close, raise horses, but what's more of a Southern Texas thing that they would do? Up against other people. Oh, Chris, you said something, but you're muted.
No, I was just repeating. Is it like an up against other people is what you said?
What about like a rodeo?
Rodeo, exactly, a rodeo. Well done, sir. Okay, so then, so now we've got our story, right? Starts off with them working. Well, we've almost got it all. They start off working. They go play at the rodeo. Then they're exhausted. They go sleep out on the prairie for a night, and then they get home the next day. Okay, so knowing that, and this is sort of celebrating the creation of Charlton University. Can anybody think of something they could use to define the university?
Is everybody on Google right now? I am.
Okay, well, in just the time, every school has a fight song, but that's not necessarily useful for this. Also, universities will have a color song. Okay, so I'm looking for anything that I can use as base material for writing the work. A phrase, a few notes, a couple of notes that would help to identify the university, not for anybody who doesn't know the joke, but for me, right? So I went online and I looked up Charlton University, and I looked up their color song, and hold on, I've got to share it.
Is this Stephenville, Texas?
Stephenville, Texas.
Okay.
Share the screen, turn on the audio the way it should be turned on. Okay, so I looked it up and I found their color song, and it goes like this. Okay, so that is the color song, and it also gave me the first three notes of the piece. Okay, ba-da-da. There's the motive. There's the motive that I needed for the piece. And so you will find that comes back. Hold on. You'll find that comes back throughout the piece in different forms, used in different ways for different scenes. And it also gave me the end of the piece, because when they've ultimately gone through all this, they've worked, they've played, they've slept, they go home. We finally develop the university, and you're going to hear the color song with my material interspersed with it. Okay, so let's go ahead and play. Now, what kind of rhythm would you expect to hear for horses? What sort of rhythm? Eighth notes, quarter notes, something like that. Yeah, you're good. You know, and also, oh, here's another good question for you. See if your instincts take you to where they took me, which is not necessarily good. What instrument would represent? What solo instrument would best represent cowboys? And don't say banjo. There's no banjo. There's no guitar. It's a wind band. So what do you think would represent them the best? Proud trumpet. No, what I say? I gave it away. Trumpet. Sorry, I gave it away. I didn't mean to do that, but I gave it away. So anyway, let me go ahead and play this for you. Now tell me if it, when it's nighttime, you expect longer notes, more relaxed feel. When it's during the working, you expect it to be more industrial sounding, you know, and when it's rodeo, you expect it to be really uninhibited. That's just where I went with it. But let's go and let's play the let's play this video. This is from the premiere performance that happened actually at Carnegie Hall with the Charlton with the wind band from the university. And so I'm going to share this, and you can. I've given you the score. You can watch the screen. You can follow the score. I built the video after it was recorded. I did not do the video first. Okay, so here you go.
Oh, awesome, Charles.
Well, thanks. I wanted to point out a couple of other things to you guys. Like I talked about using the same opening 3 notes in a couple of different places. So I'm going to play that for you now with the score. I'm going to show you the score so you can see. I used it throughout the piece 3 or 4 times, but 2 main places I used that opening theme, of course, here. And I used it later with the clarinets. So once you've established that material, you can go any place you want, but it gives you one of the building blocks for the piece. And once you've come up with 5 or 6 different ideas, I remember when I was in college, I would hear teachers say like, oh, it's composing is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. And I never believed it. I thought you should be inspired through the whole thing. But then as you get older and you learn more about actually composing, you realize that you don't have to create that much material, but you need to learn to manipulate it to make it last over time. But the inspiration is large, and I'm sure they've been teaching you about the 4 main methods of manipulating material, which is diminution, which means you have all the rhythms. Augmentation, you double all the rhythms. Retrograde, play it backwards. Or inversion, where you flip it upside down. I have 2 more that I use in animation, which is whole tone. Because if you want to go to a really offset key and you need to get there pretty fast, whole tone gives you a lot more opportunity to get to new keys fast. Although you can get to almost any key you want within 2 chords if you need to. And then the other one escapes me right now, but but let me, so I play this and then I want to play the riding theme. I think it's the riding theme is next. Yeah. Okay, now I want you to notice here, as a composer, and if you're writing for pieces and you expect them to get played live, you've got to write logically. One of the best ways to do that is to use dovetailing. So you don't have any instrument having to play every single note unless it's in a really easy range form. Like for the bass clarinet, that's a super easy range. That's not a problem. But you got to give the really bigger instruments chances to breathe while they're playing these lines. So nobody gets more than 5 notes at a time, you know. And of course, for bari sax, this is what they love to do. And if they leave a note out here and there, it doesn't matter because the material's covered elsewhere in the piece. So that's the riding theme. And then let's see, what did I have next here? Okay. This is, I have this material happen twice in the piece, okay? One of my rules is you never do anything the exact same way twice. You don't need to change a lot. You can just change a little, but it makes it fresh for the audience again. So here.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. Did everyone hear what he just said?
Yeah. Try not to have anything the exact same way twice because you're always trying to re-engage your audience so they don't lose interest, okay? So, but here are 2 versions of the same material. Now here's another version with a small thing inserted. So you see how I added the 2/4 bar in the middle of those? Ba-da-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-dee-da-da-da-da-da. Small little change, but it makes it makes it new again for the audience. And here you can hear I use the original color song and intersperse my material with it. So now you're combining both aspects of it. And that's what I've got to say about that piece. Anybody, any questions is fine. You've got the scores, study them all you want. The video is on YouTube. You can watch it whenever you want.
So, Charles, if you wouldn't mind, what's
Sure.
the next piece you'd like to share?
The next piece I want to share with you guys is called Bacchus Alatus. I was commissioned by Dr. Larry Stoffel over at CSUN to write a work for their premiere performance at the Bach Festival. This was going to be the very, very first time a wind band played at the Los Angeles Bach Festival at that beautiful cathedral. I think it's on Commonwealth with the really great organ. So they asked me to write a work for organ and concert band. And thinking back, I should have exploited the organ quite a bit more. And actually the original version is on YouTube. The original version's on YouTube, but also this version you're going to hear. The original happened in the cathedral. So you could play one big chord and it could last for 10 seconds, right? So clarity was a bit of an issue with that performance inside, you know. But anyway, so it's the Bach Festival. So I'm thinking, okay, what is my source here? Organ, of course. Bach Festival, one of my favorite groups of pieces of all time has always been the Brandenburg Concertos, the Brandenburg Concerti. So I went through the scores of all the Brandenburg Concertos and I found about 20 references. And so if you really know them well, you'll hear lots of little bitty tiny snippets of material from those in it. But that's one of the things that I do when I'm writing is I try to put in musical jokes or musical things that if people are listening, they might be doing their dishes and they're listening and they'll all of a sudden go, what was that? You know, and of course by then it's gone. They're going to have to go and watch it somewhere else to find it again. So here was the deal. Two sections. The one where the little girl is going to the cathedral, and then she's at this big party, and it's her reaction to all the people in 2s and 3s and 4s, and then it just became a game for me of changing up the instrumentation to keep it fresh with this material that I put together. You know, using brass and then winds and then the woodwinds with the low brass, and then just basically variety. So if you study this score, you'll find lots of different ideas. And there's actually even, I know that most people aren't, you guys certainly aren't going to hear it, but maybe Karen and Akira might hear it. I even put a 2-bar tribute to Sir Robin from the Holy Grail. And it'll be interesting to see if you can pick that out.
Oh, I've seen that movie.
Yeah, so see if you figure out what 2 bars is that. But I found a whole bunch of pictures, and to help tell the story, I put some text at the beginning. And also, I was talking to Akira and Karen before. Another thing I like to do is to write material that you can put on top of each other. Like in the first piece, you heard the color song, but you heard it interspersed with mine. In this one, the opening material fits directly over the second material. And so you hear all that together at the end of the piece. It's one of the just things I do to keep my sanity. So anyway, I'll just go ahead and play this for you. And if you know the Brandenburgs, you're going to hear a lot of a lot of just fun things about it. But I hope you enjoy it. And listen for the 2 bars for Sir Robin. Well, thanks. So I want to share, there are a couple little snippets of this I want to share. First is the opening material. Then the opening material to the second section. And then how I combine it at the end. Now, when you do something like that, you have to pick what's the most important material. Hold on, let me close this. In this case, the more important material was the organ material at the beginning. So while I kept the rhythmic aspects of the dance music, I might have changed the notes to fit into the chords. But you have the dee going on with the bum 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 bum, and that's one of the things that I find really fun to do, is combine material like that. And I've always tried to do that in my writing and animation as well. You have your themes for the different characters. There's one scene from All Dogs Christmas Carol, where there's a particular theme for the little devils and there's a particular theme for the Ernest Borgnine character, and you combine them all together when everything's going nuts on the screen. And that's what, sort of what makes it fun for me. So I hope that was helpful. I hope and again, you have the scores, and the original performance and this performance are both on YouTube. You can write to me anytime, ask me questions, and whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it's really amazing. And I think what's really important here, and I hope you guys are doing it, but is to really, firstly, is to look through and do that score study. I mean, we're not putting these things into YouTube for, into the playlist for our health. It's sort of like and you find, as we're touching back, like people are working with different mentors and you're getting referred back to these scores. And now you've met the composers of these pieces who are providing you with scores, who are accessible to us. So ask them questions. The couple takeaways for me from Charles's work is, firstly, I think he's very, very, very well studied before he goes in. So if you heard what he said, he went in and listened to these different Bach pieces. He was really, attentive to the color song from the Texas University. So it's really important. Like when Karen gives you a bunch of listening assignments, I've given you some, JP has given some, right? These are important reasons, and we're pulling them out for different reasons. And as much as you can now on YouTube, I try to dump ones in with the scores attached, but I think it's important to actually look at the scores as you see it, because it really shows you how these composers, not just by ear, but how they're stretching things out. And take a really good look at Charles's score. They're actually pretty amazing to do it. The other thing I'll notice about, which I've told some of you in mentoring, is that I don't know if you noticed or felt the same way, but I had multiple moments in both of Charles's songs where I got goosebumps, where I was very excited to hear it. It was thrilled. And so that's something that you really should, if you saw it, I know Huxley's seen this, but there's a documentary score. And when I saw it, the one thing I took away was give yourself goosebumps when you're writing your music. So if you're not excited about it, if there's not something that's, making you emotional and big, go for that, try that. And you see I listened to all of Charles's music. When I first found out about Charles way back, before, I went in and listened to a bunch of his playlists. Just quick note, I was giving your frolic for tuba. I sent that over to Rick Becker, one of our other mentors. Oh, he was on with you that day. I was like, you got to listen to this. And
Oh,
I'm gonna try that. so I really think that Charles, because especially because you know him and you've met him, I think it's a really good idea to go listen to all of his music and see, and especially because he's provided you with scores for 4 of them. So that's an important piece to this puzzle to like really, use
And
as a plus.
and
You'll get his email.
Yeah, and if you hear something else of mine online and you want to score, just write to me. I'll be happy to send it to you. But here's another important point about you folks who want to be composers. Composers have a palette, painters have a palette, writers have a palette, um, sculptors have a palette. The more things you study, the more things you learn, the more colors you're going to have on your palette that you can call on at a moment's notice. So, if you're familiar with just one type of music, that's fine. But if somebody asks you to write in a different style, well, I mean, when I was working on the first series I was working on under my own name with a Casper series, I wound up going to Tower Records every week and buying 2 or 3 different CDs. Because if I'm going to do a takeoff on something, I want to really know what that music does so that it's convincing, not ripping off their material, but the orchestration for it, the how it's supposed to sound. And now, of course, now we have YouTube. You don't have to, that's why nobody really buys music anymore. They just stream it. But the more styles you get used to, the more you can write. If somebody calls you and says, I want you to write a Latin tune, you got to go to YouTube and listen to some Latin music. I just did a thing for flutes based on Carnival. So then you really have to get creative with listening to the music, because you're going to have to transpose it into an ensemble that doesn't have any of those instruments in it. And how are you going to make that work? It's going to be rhythms basically that are going to make it work. And then you hopefully got people who can swing, but that's beside the point. The more stuff you put on your palette, the more colors you have in your palette, the more flexible you can be. And that's very important. And there's no shortcut other than listening. So
Very cool.
anyway.
Well, everybody, Charles, thank you so much. If you can hang out for just one more minute so I can just talk to
Absolutely.
you. And everyone else, thank you so much. Great work today. We will
you.
see you
Thank you.
next
Great work, everybody.
Thank you.
Bravo, everybody.
next week.